started, and just as a point of reference, of the people here, how many of you have ever seen him before, or this is your first time? Okay, almost everybody. That's good. That's good. I appreciate that. Here's what I want to do. We're going to start things off, and I'd like to start this off with a really rousing cheer, getting things started. So I'm going to go off over to the side, and I'm going to come back out, and I want you guys to really clap and cheer and whoop it up. And I mean, if you want to stand up, that'd be great. Anything you want to do, but just listen. I just really want to hear it. So let's start this thing off with a bang. So here we go. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. And now, ladies and gentlemen, from high atop the first floor of the downtown Mercury Center, please welcome the world's most adequate MC, Randy Carter. Oh my goodness, that's overwhelming. Thank you so much. I am humbled. Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you. Hey, welcome everybody. We're going to have fun, but we're not playing around. This is serious business tonight, and we're here to answer your questions, to give you information, to educate you on what we know about these turnpikes. Now, one of the things that I have found out, and I don't know who it is, it's only been a rumor, one of the people that's pretty high up in the Turnpike Authority used to be a pilot for the Oklahoma City stockyards. Yeah, what they would do is they would haul the manure over, and he'd pilot. And the reason I say that is because, if you guys are aware, and we certainly are, there seems to be a lot of manure that's being spread around. And tonight we want to try to help dispel some of that. We've got a number of speakers that are going to talk about some different things to help bring you up to speed on where a Plakoff OTA is with these turnpikes and fighting them. Now, a couple little housekeeping things. Back in the back, we've got drinks and what else?
Charcuterie.
I never can say that
That's
word.
okay. Snack boxes.
Snack boxes, okay. I don't sound near as cosmopolitan saying it that way. Snack boxes available for purchase. And we want to thank the Mercury Center very much for being so adaptable and letting us use this tonight. I don't know if you all are aware, I'm assuming you are. Did anybody go to the Weather Center tonight first? Okay, thank you. Were there people there to direct you? Yes, perfect, thank you. We found out, Kelly and our group had been planning this for weeks and weeks and weeks. We found out, day before yesterday, that the Weather Center was no longer going to allow us to hold the event there. I don't know what's going on, there's lots of speculation, but we're glad to be here tonight. We certainly thank the Mercury Center for accommodating us. And so if you would certainly help them out and purchase drinks and that sort of thing, we'd appreciate that. Okay, Tanner. Tanner, where are you? This is Tanner right back here. He is interviewing people that are directly or nearly affected by the Turnpike. If you're willing to be on camera and talk to him about your situation, he's getting this information out to people, and it's a very good deal. So let's have a hand for Tanner for doing that. That's great. Well, and speaking of that, Jesse, raise your hand. Where are you, back there? Jessie back there, she's been doing photographs of people's families that have been affected and doing a wonderful job getting the word about who is directly affected by the Turnpike. How many of you here tonight are in the direct path of the Turnpike? Oh gosh, I see a lot of hands. Well, and mine's up too. Stan, I know you are. You're directly south of me. So thank you all for being here, and we are going to have a good time talking about things that we can do to make sure the Turnpike doesn't come through our homes. All right, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is a world-famous attorney, represented such prestigious clients as the University of Oklahoma. He has come out of retirement to fight the OTA. Stan, I love you already. Let me introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, Stan Ward.
As you can see, I've got a beautifully prepared set of notes. Good evening, foes of the pike. I doubt if there are too many friends of the pike. You know, we're in Norman, Oklahoma. It's a big university community. And I don't know how many of you, when you were at college or some other phase of your academic endeavors, heard these two horrific words, pop quiz. We're going to do a pop quiz. So what a way to start off. And the pop quiz question for the evening is this. What do the following have in common? Pearl Harbor, 9/11, and the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority.
Sneak attack.
Sneak attacks. And that's exactly why we're all here, because we have been victimized by a sneak attack of a lot of persons who I would say are fellow conspirators. They have made this a very difficult proposition for us by operating in the dark. We all know that the intent of the legislature back in the 1970s was to ensure that we are going to have openness and transparency in government. And that's why they passed the State's Open Meeting Act. And that requires agendas to be prepared to inform citizens, just like each one of you happen to be in this room, of the nature of business to be transacted in a public forum. And those agendas are supposed to be comprehensive enough to allow a person of common knowledge and education to be able to understand the business that is going to be transacted and conducted in the meeting. I say that as background information because that is exactly what did not happen. And to give you a little bit of a primer here, on behalf of about 150 property owners adversely affected by the Turnpike, a lawsuit was filed in the District Court of Cleveland County on May 18th of this year. It's being slow played. It was assigned to a judge who happened to be my nephew, and of course he couldn't handle the case. And then it got to another judge, and she didn't want the case. And so it's been punted down to Ardmore, and we still don't know who that judge is. So I can tell you what the effect has been. Normally speaking, after a lawsuit is filed, you will either get an answer or a motion to dismiss. And in this particular case, the defense has elected to file motions to dismiss our case. They filed two separate motions. Neither one of them, as of this date, is set for a hearing. Now, what does that mean? We're over 2 months deep into this litigation, and we still don't have a date to hear these motions to dismiss the lawsuit. Well, how does that affect discovery? Unfortunately, in Oklahoma, for the most part, you're constrained. You cannot start your discovery until there has been an answer filed in the lawsuit. We are going to seek a motion to accelerate on behalf of our party's plaintiffs so that we can start that process. And then we would know a little bit more about what has happened. But because of the diligence of a lot of people in this room that have worked very hard to secure the information, this is what we do know. There were 3 key meetings. December the 7th of 2021, January the 25th of 2022, and February 22 of this year. Those were the regularly conducted meetings of of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. When do you think they first announced their intent to we the people as to what they were going to do? We didn't learn of that until actually February the 23rd, the day after that meeting of February 22nd. But this is what we have found out. This is not just the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority operating in a vacuum. It has conducted meetings with the mayors and city managers of Purcell, Noble, Moore, and I don't know about Norman, but I do know that they met with our Director of Public Works. And they all were on notice of what was going to happen with this proposed extension process, the extension which we're going to refer to as east-west extension and north-south extension. Can I see a show of the hands of how many of you are impacted by the proposed east-west extension? How about the north-south? Well, how far do you think it is up to the Turnpike today? Is it close by?
No.
It's a long ways from this area of Cleveland County. So they kept all of this in secret. We believe that they've hired a number of engineering firms, including Poe and Associates. And Poe and Associates, if we read the notes correctly, was paid $5 million to do the pre-engineering work. So we know that they have been a long time in planning this, and how much it predates December 7th of 2021, we do not know, but we're going to find that out during the discovery process. We also know that there were a lot of publicly elected officials that were privy to this information, while it was kept secret from everyone in this particular room. So that's the way it operated, and we all got surprised when we heard that they were going forward with this plan back in February. That caused all of you to become extraordinarily concerned, because we hold dear in this country life, liberty, and property. Property rights are very valuable rights, and they're very foundational to a democracy. But yet, they have been abused in this process. We have had people who have just thought so little of us that they are disdainful, they are disrespectful, and they could care less how each one of us think the investment that we have in terms of time, money, emotion in our properties. And we've said this before, but it's worthy of repeating. For the most part, people that have elected to live in rural sectors where we all live did it because it is a lifestyle choice. People want to get away from the hubbub. How many of you are real anxious to join a neighborhood that has an HOA? Well, we lawyers just love it when you do, because they just breed litigation like mosquitoes. So if you want to stay out of that particular environment, you go out to the country, you think that you're secure. Who cares if your dog barks? Who cares if you walk out into the yard and get your paper in your underwear? So it takes away a certain amount of freedom that you enjoy in this setting that you'll never see in a more urbanized setting and community. So what we have is a great enthusiasm to test whether Oklahoma Turnpike Authority has violated this Open Meeting Act. And that is the thrust of the lawsuit that I have brought on behalf of about 150 plaintiffs, and I'm told there's 85 more that want to join now as parties planned. So that's a big constituency. The fact is that we want to test if they have violated the law, and in my opinion, they've clearly violated it repeatedly. And if they do, what's the impact? It causes everything that's been done, if it's a willful violation, to restart. Everything they would have done to that point of the declaration of invalidity is invalid. So they would have to restart the process. Now, like a lot of things in life and the law, there's no real simple answers. Because the next step is, well, how do you stop this abuse from going forward again? And I will respectfully submit to you, you do it through the initiative and referendum process. The state of Oklahoma is very lucky. In 1906, we had a brilliant lawyer who wrote the Oklahoma Constitution for the most part, by the name of Bill Alfalfa Murray. And he wrote the Constitution in such a manner as to say the following. The legislature that sits up in Oklahoma City only possesses that legislative power specifically granted to it by we the people. All of the rest of the legislative power remains vested in us to be exercised in one of two ways: the initiative petition or the referendum. Now, I'm testing your civic knowledge of Oklahoma government. Probably some of you had Oklahoma history. But I can tell you that it's very difficult to have any kind of a referendum petition when your governor and the legislature don't want you to have it. So I would say you can just mark an X through that option, and you're left with the remaining option of what? An initiative petition. And virtually in every general election, there'll be at least one or two initiative questions that the people of this state are asked to vote on. Well, let's look at that process. Is it easy? No. You got to gather a bunch of signatures. Once you gather the signatures, your opponents, and they'll be very, very well funded, they'll come at you and say, well, your signatures are insufficient. You'll go down to the Supreme Court and argue that one. Then they'll say you have an improper ballot title. You'll go back to the Supreme Court to argue that. Then they'll say the body of the proposed amendment is somehow insufficient. You go back to the Supreme Court for a ruling on that. If you can clear all of those hurdles, it will then be put to the voting people. And in my opinion, here's what it has to say. Before there can be the exercise of eminent domain or the threat of eminent domain, all persons within at least 1 mile of the proposed project must vote for it, the majority vote. Now, if all the people in that area want the turnpike or whatever it is that they're trying to construct, so be it. The people have spoken. The people have had a say in the process. When I was involved many years back in State Question 640, that stopped the imposition of a tax increase every time the legislature met, that's exactly what we did do. We were told it could never happen. But we had a grassroots movement. We were totally underfunded. And you know what? Sometimes David whips the ass off of Goliath. You're all familiar with that story, as you can find in Samuel, 2 Samuel. It takes resolve. You're going to have to be girded, in my opinion, with a fighting spirit, with the mighty armor of God, and put on your helmets, and go out there and stay in this fight. But it's not just an easy walk through the park. You're going to be confronted by a lot of buggers and a lot of people who do not want us to succeed. And if you understand where the money is in these turnpikes, you'll have a lot better understanding of why the stakes are so high. Right now, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority has an unfunded liability of over $2 billion, the biggest in the state. That's a lot of money. And all these bonds that they're going to issue are revenue bonds. And those damn revenue bonds have to be self-liquidating. If they're not self-liquidating, you know what happens then? The bondholders get to take the roads back. The more likely probability is going to be this. If that should ever happen, the general obligation will be paid by you people from tax revenues. It is a vicious cycle. It has put us all on a red alert. We have to stay the course. We have to be willing to stay in there when it looks bleak. You mean another day's gone by and we still don't have a judge for the cases? How can that be? Well, it is. So we know that the other side is working feverishly to go as far downstream as they can, and then they'll be able to say to the court, well, look, this is already a fait accompli, it's already something that's accomplished. So we've got to answer those arguments and answer them with zeal and with logic and with a concise set of briefs. So I can just say in conclusion of my remarks, stay with it. Winners never quit. Quitters never win.
Right.
So the old coach's cliche comes in very, very handy in a scenario just like that. There'll be times that you will want to quit this fight. And remember, if you quit, you can't stay in there and you have no choice and no hope. So I think this group of people has shown a giant resolve, a willingness to put out time, energy, and effort to protect their property, protect their legacies, and protect a way of life that they have selected in this great country. So I'll be happy to answer questions. I think that's the next part of this presentation, is it not? So I'm going to conclude that with my remarks, but I'll be happy to try to answer your questions. The lawyers are better at asking questions than they are answering.
There's a question, Stan.
Hi, Stan. Do we know who the judges are in Ardmore that we're in front of that have not accepted the case yet? Are there 2, 3, 5? Do we know who they are?
Well, they've got one district judge in Ardmore, and when I had the FOP case against the city, they had the associate district judge from Ardmore. He was appointed as our judge. He was very good, very fair, and I understand that the district judge in Ardmore was a very fair man, and I wouldn't be upset if that's who it is. There's been some discussion about it being assigned to the district judge of Pontotoc County, which is Ada. But hopefully we're going to find that out in the next couple of days. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So, how long do you think this delay will delay them? Are we talking years, or do you think this will be months?
I'm going to answer your question the way Abraham Lincoln answered the question once. They asked Mr. Lincoln, "You're a tall man, Mr. Lincoln. How long should a man's legs be?" And his answer was just long enough to touch the ground. So, it is difficult to predict how long this is going to take. But these are not jury cases, they are bench trials. So they should be much more expeditious. But they say, it's been my observation and experience, if you can get a bench trial in Oklahoma to the courtroom within a year, you're doing very well. That's a fast track to get it to court. So it's going to be at least a year.
And the petition, if we are able to start that petition, how long does that generally take? Would that also be like a year or several years?
No, you only have a very short period of time on an initiative petition to gather your signatures. They base it on the number of votes at the last general election. There's a whole set of statutes that deal with what you have to do in terms of the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So what it will entail is, in order to get the requisite signatures, you're going to have to hire professional signature gatherers. People in this room can go out and gather signatures, but it's difficult to ever get enough signatures without hiring those kinds of people. But I will also tell you, this is the very best time that's coming up to gather signatures. Why? Because it's football season and state fair season. And you want it where people are gathered. And that's the easiest thing to do in terms of getting signatures collected. So there needs to be a real focus on trying to push this issue forward so that we the people can finally make these decisions whether you're going to have a Turnpike project in the first instance. That'll be the only way that you're going to have any control in the future. I don't think I tested it for sure. I hope I answered your question, ma'am.
Yes, I just have one more question about the judges. That you said one couldn't be because he was related to you, and the other judge just didn't want to hear it. Is that correct?
Well,
and is this common, or is this just something particular to this problem?
there's always reasons why you might not like to handle certain cases, and I won't speculate, but oftentimes these high public interest cases, publicity jurist cases as they're referred to, they draw a lot of lightning. One thing you have to remember, in Oklahoma we elect judges every 4 years at the district court level, and so we have a judicial race that's going on right now. And so I think that discretion being the better part of valor, when you get something like this, it's one of those cases that some people might consider not a win-win scenario. And so you're going to see more of them dumped off to other judges and out of area. Why do you go out of area? They don't have to stand for re-election in this district. It's that simple.
Thank you.
How quickly could this be put on a ballot?
Well, you're not going to get it on a November ballot.
Right.
You'd have to wait for the next general election.
Which is 2 years. Oklahoma never holds special elections.
It could be a special election, but I guess they'd have to call it.
Yeah. Governor Joy, right?
Yeah, I mean. So you'd have a real problem there, quite frankly, of getting it to the next general election.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can the Attorney General do anything about this?
Well, I think there's hope. I think Governor Drummond will be the next Attorney General. And he's more of a free thinker than I don't think he's tied into the governor's short tails. So I think there's a ray of hope there. So I think we've got a chance there to talk to Mr. Drummond and hopefully marshal his support.
What about Linda Steele? She's awful shocked with this.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you very well.
What about Linda Steele? She's awful shocked with this. She's still a regular Attorney General.
Well, you know, I'm just telling you what the odds makers say. The likelihood will be Governor Drummond. Yeah.
I'm not a Clint Schumacher. I'm concerned about the Dallas West where it drops off behind every southwest. Has anybody reached out to Andy's office with their position is on this? That board of traffic and no station on there. They can do sessions.
Yeah,
You guys, I could probably answer that on this sheet. There's, if you'll put your question into us and we can find that out. That's probably not Stan's area of expertise, and that's something that's something that we can find out. I'm sorry.
that's fine. We want to try to answer the questions, but I don't have to think it too bad. Anything else? I know we got a busy agenda tonight, and if you think of a question at the end of this, there might be another opportunity to ask some questions. I thank you for your time, your attention, your zeal, your passion, and your fortitude to stay in this fight. You've got a lot to protect, and you've been called to good citizenship and keep it up.
Thank you, Stan. Stan, you got a standing ovation. All right, congratulations. Stan, by the way, it's okay to go out in your yard in your underwear as long as you keep it brief. That hurt me too, sorry. I couldn't resist. I don't. Thank you. I appreciate that. We do have some elected officials here tonight I'd like to recognize really quickly. Richard Tortorello, Ward 5, City Councilman is here. And by the way, he is live streaming this on his Facebook page. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, super. All right. Andy Nance. Andy, are you here? Andy's a candidate for District 45 State House. Kendra Wesson. Kendra, are you here? There she is, Kendra Wesson, House District 46. Thank you for coming. Linda Steele. Linda. There she is, Linda Steele, candidate for Attorney General. And Natalie Bruno. Natalie, there she is, candidate for Governor. If I fail to introduce anybody else that's here that's a candidate or elected official, please let Keith know, and I will certainly introduce you. We do appreciate you being here and supporting our cause. Our next speaker, we're going to have another lawyer, and I am proud to say this has become a friend of mine, and a highly experienced lawyer in litigation, complex litigation, employment, business, insurance, public interest, and government affairs law. Rob Norman is the person that is basically the lead attorney on the lawsuit that Michael OTA and a number of the plaintiffs have filed against the Turnpike Authority. Now, this lawsuit had a great effect on the bond council meeting not too long ago, and I'm going to introduce to you Rob Norman, who is a proud fan of the University of Oklahoma and the Thunder. Please welcome Rob Norman.
move venues at the last minute. You have to kind of set up at the last minute, get things straightened out, so we can Facebook Live, so we can all be speakers. First thing here is probably a lot of you who met me or have read some of these things have seen Robert Norman all over everything. Or if you see my Facebook page, it's Robert Norman. That's because my parents called me Robert as a kid. But really what I answer to is some people who've been trying to yell at me as Robert tonight and figured out they got to yell at me as Rob, because that's what I really go by. And that's both what I've gone by as an adult, and I have to do it in my law firm. That's because we have 4 attorneys that are named Robert. And so one of us has to go by Rob, one of us has to go by Bob, one of us has to go by Robert, and one of us, the low one on the totem pole, has to go by Virgin. He's got a lot of dues to pay still, and someday we'll let him call himself Robert again. But kind of, Stan gave an outstanding talk and talked about a lot of outstanding things about the OTA. I'd like to start off with focusing on how our lawsuit, maybe more than anything, is about the rule of law and the vitality of representative democracy. Right now, those 2 things are very sick patients all across the world. They're very sick patients in our country. They're very sick patients in our state. And what's going on with the OTA is really just a symptom of the problem. That's what I tell people who aren't anymore. That's what I tell people who are somewhere else in the state. That's what I tell people who live somewhere else in the country. But kind of, Stan gave an outstanding talk and talked about a lot of outstanding things about the OTA. I'd like to start off with focusing on how our lawsuit, maybe more than anything, is about the rule of law and the vitality of representative democracy. Right now, those 2 things are very sick patients all across the world. They're very sick patients in our country. They're very sick patients in our state. And what's going on with the OTA is really just a symptom of the problem. That's what I tell people who aren't in Norman. That's what I tell people who are somewhere else in the state. That's what I tell people who live somewhere else in the country who maybe have heard a little bit about this and say, what's the big deal? What's the problem? Tell me about this. And I tell them what it's really about is the rule of law. Here's what we kind of used to do. We haven't always been very good at the rule of law or representative democracy, but I think there was a time not too long ago when if we wanted to do something, whether we were a bureaucrat, an elected official, or just a citizen, the first question we asked is, well, I'd like the government to do something, or I'd like to do something for the public. First question we asked was what? Is it lawful? And if we answered that question yes, we moved on and said, well, who's going to be impacted by this? Let's get some public input. Let's get some buy-in. Let's ask first. And then, after we answered both those questions yes, then we do it. If we answer the question, is it lawful? And the answer is no. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we made a decision that we had to make it lawful first. We had to go through the representative democracy process. And again, go through public input. And again, ask the question, ask the people, ask our elected representatives, get buy-in, and then we did it. That's actually the way it used to work with turnpikes. But unfortunately, we live in a world now where that's not the way it's working now. And that is what our lawsuit is about. Stan has an Open Meetings Act lawsuit. We have a lawsuit involving Pike Off OTA, which is actually an advocacy group that's looking to rein in the OTA, that's looking to make sure the OTA abides by the rule of law and representative democracy. Our lawsuit is about the fact that these turnpikes are plain and simple not lawful. In 2 cases, they are not legislatively authorized. And then we have a claim that says, even if they were lawful, even if you could decide that these things are lawful and they fix the legislation, the OTA is outbuilding them in an unlawful manner. not according to the proper legal requirements. Now, to kind of go over that a little bit, I'll go over that and break it down a little bit. Some of you are very familiar with it, some of you just kind of see it, and some of you would like probably to know a little bit more about it. First, there's a first claim for relief in our lawsuit which says the South Extension Turnpike was never legislatively authorized. Now that's something all of you in the public and in social media, you don't have to be a lawyer to figure that out. I mean, you may have to be a lawyer to really wind down the road and do the legal process and things like that, do the court case, but y'all figured it out pretty quick on social media and looking at the statute and just being a plain, ordinary person with some common sense. But they didn't have this. They were kind of making up a route that the legislature had never, ever authorized. And so that is the South Extension case in a nutshell. The legislature never authorized it. So we're saying South Extension never legislatively authorized. They're not allowed to issue bonds for it, which is the only way they can build a turnpike. They're not allowed to build it. Second claim is what we call, second claim applies to the east-west connector, which goes across Indian Hills, connects at I-44, I-35, and then roller coasters up between Draper and Thunderbird up to where the Kickapoo is now. That's the east-west connector, at least as the OTA defines it now. They change their minds sometimes. But the east-west connector and the Tri-City connector, is there anyone here involved with the Tri-City connector impacted by that? That's actually kind of up in South Oklahoma City by the airport and things like that. But the same argument applies to both of them. What's going on with the east-west connector and the Tri-City connector is it looks like, okay, they drew those routes out, and it looks like there's a good case to be made that those were authorized back in 1987. Way back when they first drew up and the legislature allowed the Oklahoma City outer loop, which by the way is the Kilpatrick. The Kilpatrick is the north part of the Oklahoma City outer loop. And it was built, first built, the biggest part of it was built in 1989. And here's the deal with the Oklahoma City outer loop, which includes the east-west connector and the Tri-City connector. That route was authorized as part of the legislative package in 1987, but it wasn't authorized on its own. The legislature, in their legislative sausage wisdom, decided, okay, Oklahoma City people, you can have an Oklahoma City outer loop, we'll go with that, but hey, we're up here in Tulsa, we want one too. So they decided to build the Greek Turnpike up in Tulsa. And they decided that they would have the Cherokee Turnpike up closer to Tulsa. And then they decided they were going to have this monstrosity in rural Oklahoma that went all the way from Duncan to Henrietta and up to Muskogee. It went all over the place. And at the end of the day, the legislative sausage said, you have to build all four of these turnpikes together, contemporaneously, at the same time. And not only did they say that, the rural legislatures and the people who kind of saw maybe they didn't want to be dominated by Oklahoma City or Tulsa said, we're not going to let you kind of mess with us and screw us over here. We're going to say you got one shot to do this. You got one bond issue. And this is exactly what the statute says. You have to go down a little further than the OTA likes to tell you. You have to go down a little further than most people go. But what you do when you read and you read and you read and you read, you go, wait. They can't do this. They can't do this because the legislature, way back in 1987, gave them one shot to build the whole Oklahoma City outer loop, to build the whole Greek Turnpike, to build the whole Cherokee, to build this whole monstrosity down in rural Oklahoma. And they took that one shot. Now, it turned out to be more than they could chew off. The bond investors and Wall Street said, no, you can't build this whole thing all at once. So they built chunks of it all at once with the one bond issue they were allowed. And then they were done. You look at the statute, you read it enough, and you figure out, then they were done. But we've had some crack researchers, Cheryl Hogat's one of them. Cheryl, you in the audience? Yeah. Cheryl's one of them. newspaper articles to archives to legislative history, and we were thinking, what are we missing? Is this really right? Did they really have one shot? Does this statute really say what it says? And when we got to history, we found out the governor was talking, the legislature was talking, Neil McCaleb, who was the transportation czar back then, were saying, yeah, this is what this means. We have to build this all four of these turnpikes at one time with one shot, with one bond issue, and they did it, and then they realized they were in a pickle. Because Bellman wanted to still do the whole thing. And Bellman realized, and McCaleb realized, and the legislature realized, we couldn't, we're done. We have to change the statute, and they tried, and they failed. And they have never changed the statute since then. That provision has always been in there. And I think it is very clear that it was in there to prevent exactly the type of thing that they're trying to do now, which is sit back, wait 35 years, let the world change, let your lives change, let you guys make a life somewhere else, and then say, oh, by the way, we're going to do this now. No. I mean, we are out to put a stop to them doing that now. We're out to put a stop. To doing what is literally legislatively unauthorized turnpike bonding and building. Now, of course, we have to get judges to agree with us on that. That's always something you gotta, the Oklahoma Supreme Court, we gotta get 5 to agree with us. We think we should. More often than not, if you're in the right on a statute, on the law, it works out for you. It doesn't always, but we're pretty confident in this case that it's going to work out for us. And a few things you guys may be hearing in the news, in the media, from people on the streets, from politicians, from candidates, and this is being fed to them, I think, straight from OTA legislative lobbying efforts and OTA political lobbying efforts. There's a saying out there that this is all a done deal. I believe that the powers, the dark money, the OTA that's trying to make this happen is going around telling everybody they can that this is a done deal and there's nothing you can do about it. It's going to happen. Now, I've had a chance to talk to some of these folks and had a chance to talk to some pro-Turnpike folks, some folks from out of town, some people who are in despair and think, what can we do about this? And this is a takeaway. I'll remind you again at the end of the speech. Don't get worried about getting down in the weeds of the argument. That can be done by lawyers, by other people, by people working in the legislature with us. Whenever someone tells you that this is a done deal, here's a takeaway to respond to this. If they say, this is a done deal, you tell them, folks, this is not a done deal. These turnpikes are a dead deal. That's a takeaway, right there. That's something to take away tonight. And I think what it does is it kind of lifts us up and gives us hope. And it's something that I kind of had to explain to some legislators that kind of the light bulb would go on their head, and then I'd go on, you'd have to do the explanation and things like that I just did. That these aren't a done deal, these are a dead deal. And remember that this is really about the rule of law. It's a symptom of a larger problem when you're talking to people. I'll have people, I live over on the west side of town, I-35. That's development bonanza over there. That is the world of development. And I'm all for development on the I-35 corridor. Fine, great. Make this a great town where we have amenity and quality of life and things like that, but not where they're putting these turnpikes. So I will talk to people about that, and they don't understand and they don't think it's conceivable that those of you who are impacted out in East Norman don't want this. Why wouldn't you want this? This is people up in Edmond, people in Oklahoma City say, why don't you want this? These are the kind of things that you've got to say to them. This is about, first of all, okay, let's say we want some more roads and we like some more roads. First of all, do we put unlawful roads in? Do we put roads in that aren't legal to put in? No. We're not supposed to do anything. The government's not supposed to do anything that's illegal. We're not supposed to be ruled by force and fiat and bureaucrats who have run amok, or politicians who have run amok and have forgotten that they've got to work with each other and work across the aisle and make things lawful. Tell them that first. This is first and foremost, yeah, this is my life. This is my life I've put together all these years. This is the sanctity of where I live and where my property is. If you don't get that, if you think it's cool to just be uprooted and live, think about the rule of law for a minute. Think about representative democracy for a minute. And think, how would you like it if someone came to you and they were trying to do things that were unlawful to you? And they were trying to do things to you that hadn't been passed as a matter of law and were really unlawful. Then hopefully they'll start to understand why we shouldn't do this. And always remember, another thing that I've been hearing, always remember, you know, no government, no state, no politician, no person in elected office is superior to the citizens of Oklahoma. Always remember. I'd like to say that our lawsuit kind of has something to do with just direct kill shots. If we win, these turnpikes are dead. Unfortunately, the OTA is kind of like a Terminator. They can arise from the ashes and come back, and they're very hard to kill. Even if you do kill them, even if you do knock out their project, even if you do win the court battle, like Stan said, that's not the end of the day. They'll go back in time and find another Terminator that's alive and bring him back to our time and start over again. They'll go back to the legislature. They'll try to fix their statutes. If they lose there, I think they will have a hard time. I think if Stan knocks them out and makes them start over again, we're going to have a lot of things we can do to stop them from starting over. I think if we knock them out on our lawsuit, we're going to have a heads up, and we're going to be way ahead in the legislative battle to come. But ultimately, I would agree with Stan that the people have got to take this back. And it's got to be an initiative petition, referendum petition type thing, where it becomes a matter of the people voting for constitutional amendments. Constitutional amendments and laws enacted by the people that keep the OTA from doing what they do. Truly hold road builders and turnpike builders, would-be turnpike builders, to the rule of law, to representative democracy, and to the will of the people. So they go back to the days when they used to ask us first, instead of just telling us and forcing it down our throat like they do now. A little bit, the procedure of the lawsuit, state-aided procedures, similar things are going on with us. All the kind of frustrations and stall tactics, motions to dismiss are going on with us. You'll hear another mantra from the OTA about how the Supreme Court has exclusive jurisdiction to hear these cases. It's really bad in Stan's case. But even in our case, it's not a constitutional argument. We presented a response to that motion to dismiss that it is not constitutional for them to rely on this exclusive original jurisdiction statute and avoid discovery and avoid full and fair hearing for people in their lawsuit. So we've done that. And next week, they're going to try to do round 2 at the Council of Bond Oversight. They kind of did what they did. They're trying to get a second bite at the apple. Some of you may remember they tried to do this first with a $200 billion line of credit. We objected, and the Council of Bond Oversight, to their credit, they're kind of unsure what they are and what they're supposed to do, but to their credit, they told them, okay, there's serious litigation pending, there's some profound concerns about these turnpikes. You can't use this line of credit for these 3 new turnpikes. And at first the OTA was like, oh, no problem. We'll just use general fund money for it. But I think pretty soon we found out that there's a lot back in the dark things they don't want to tell us about. They've got a lot more problems than we think. They decided kind of abruptly about a month ago that that wasn't going to work. And they needed some money to do this. So they walked out, kind of blindsided us again, and gave us basically 1 day notice and said, hey, tomorrow we're going to revoke this line of credit. We're going to decide we're going to go to bond council again. We're going to go to the Supreme Court and do this again. We're going to come at this another way. And we're going to hurry. We're going to rush. And we're not going to give all y'all a fair chance to have your concerns heard. And that's kind of what happened. Next Thursday, they go to the bond council again. And I'm going to tell you, their paperwork isn't any better than it was the last time. Nothing's changed. We're going to file an objection to that. It's going to be a matter of public records. It's going to be a matter of Open Records Act. We'll be happy to share that as a matter of public record with people. And we're going to go there and we're going to ask the bond council once again, don't give them any kind of approval for bonds for these 3 turnpikes. Their application is deficient, their case is deficient. These lawsuits are still pending. They've gotten no further along with what they said they would, getting them resolved the last time. They don't want to get them resolved. So that's the thing that's right on the hill right now and teed up, is the bond council, again, whatever they do isn't binding in a court of law later on. And win or lose, you don't win or lose the case. But I think it does matter, and it does send a message, and it does make the OTA accountable if once again those council people will do the same thing they did last time and say, no, you can't issue bonds for these 3 turnpikes as long as this litigation is pending. So we're going to be seeking, we want to reject an application totally, but we're hoping that we'll at least do that. So that's the next thing that is teed up, litigation-wise. And just kind of remember, folks, again, I want you to remember, if there's a takeaway from these people, it happens to me all the time. And I used to just kind of not say it, but I've gotten to the point where we're far enough along that I do say it because I feel confident about it. What are you going to say the next time someone comes up to you and says, oh, these turnpikes are a done deal? There you go. You go, no, sir, these turnpikes are a dead deal. And keep that in mind. And stay at it. Like Stan said, you just got to keep at it, and keep at it, and keep at it. We're the better side. We've got the law on our side. We've got the right on our side. We've got the representative democracy on our side. We've got the rule of law on our side. Stay at it. Don't let anyone tell you that this is hopeless. Don't let anyone tell you that this is a done deal. Stay at it, fight, and don't quit until we win. Thanks.
Turnpikes get paid off, does the government get possession of them? That's your question?
Well, that's a very complicated question indeed. I would say as a practical matter, as long as they're going like they go right now, they ain't never going to get paid off. And they're sure never going to get paid off if this goes through, because this is an exponential doubling down by the Turnpike Authority. They're in $1.8 million of debt, and they want to do and they want to issue another $5 billion in debt. Now, one of the things going on is I think they need these 2 turnpikes, these 3 turnpikes, to keep this thing rolling, to keep going. Because the better policy, if they need to make the Turner a better place, if they need to make their existing turnpikes a better place, the better policy is to get these things paid off as quick as you can, turn them into free roads. And that's going to open up public accountability. That's going to open up the possibility of federal funds, which they don't have now. But for all kinds of vast reasons, they don't want to do that. I don't see there being, unless we can make some real exponential changes in what the OTA is allowed to do, I don't see these roads ever being paid off. That's another important thing about this fight, is we've got to clip their wings, and this is the place to do it, here and now. And then start this initiative petition process. And some of you remember, I don't want to get too much into politics, but if you remember, the Republican platform, the Republican Party platform, is a no more turnpikes platform. The Republican Party platform is paying these off and turning into free roads. And no more use of eminent domain to build turnpikes. We need to do that. I can't tell you when they get paid off. I'm not an actuary, and if I were an actuary and I couldn't give you a year, the lawyer in me would come back and say, don't believe it's not going to happen. It must be made fundamental political change.
Yeah, I know they made arrangements for it. But technically speaking, since that could become membership of the state of Oklahoma, as a taxpayer, should I have the right to vote on that petition?
Well, That would require some legislative change and some additional petition change. But yes, I agree, and I think Stan agrees, and Stan talked about, we need to create a process where public input is more built into the process. In other words, I think it's a good idea. We can talk about complications, but let's start with the idea that we don't have another turnpike unless we pass it by referendum, either statewide or in the region that's involved that will be impacted by the turnpike. Let's do that. But we have to do that kind of stuff by issuing petition, because right now you have no say right now in what the OTA is trying to do, except what we're doing here. You have to file lawsuits. You have to get up and you have to create a political fight with them. And you don't have any automatic institutional say or vote on whether a turnpike is built, correct?
Or a casino.
What?
Or a casino.
Or a casino? Well, that's probably true too.
Is the request before the Council of Bond Oversight specifically for the turnpikes, or are they just asking for more money for improvements like they did before?
All of the above.
So
And that's a great question.
Do the same thing and say, okay, you can have the money for improvements, and then they have more cash that they can take from the improvements and then use for the turnpikes anyway?
Yeah, well, now what they essentially did with the line of credit is they said, okay, there's a case to be made that we need a 6-lane to Turner, we need to get an exit to Davenport, we need to turn these into real modern day highways instead of death traps. That's a maintenance project. That's different than a new turnpike. And that's kind of what the Council of Bond Oversight did last time around. Okay, you can do your work with this line of credit, but it has to be on places like the Turner, the H.E. Bailey, the Kilpatrick, things that are already built that you can do improvements on, but you're not going to do them for these 3 new turnpikes. They can say the same thing this time, and that would certainly be a more wise ruling than giving them just carte blanche. But the way the application is worded now, it's astonishingly vague. It's not designed for just even a person on the Council of Bond Oversight to understand just looking at it, because it's astonishingly vague. It appears to be a request to issue $450 million in bonds for all of the accessible or capital projects. I guess all means all. I guess that means, and they don't tell us what part of the east-west connector, what part of the south extension, what part of the turn. What are you doing? What are you going to do with this money? Well, just trust us. We just want $450 million in bonds, and we're going to work on all the projects.
So essentially, it could have the same results on July 28th or whatever date it is, that they could say the same thing. Okay, you can have the money, just don't use it for the...
Could be.
Is there anything that we can do, like writing to the Council of Bond Oversight, that could actually help convince them? Or, I mean, is there anything we can do?
Well, you're entitled to make public comment, but it's real, I can tell you, it's highly technical and really kind of strange public comment that you make in front of the Council of Bond Oversight. In other words, Amy Serrano did a beautiful objection the last time around, similar to what you've heard her do before in front of the OTA, Transportation Commission, and the council's response to that was, that's the merits of the project, we can't do anything about that.
But
You have to kind of get to bond issues.
But as far as before is the meeting July 28th?
Yes, show up.
Okay.
Show up. Show up. You can't show up. You don't get to talk when you show up.
What
But
about
show up.
writing to them before the meeting?
You can write to them beforehand. You can write to them beforehand. You absolutely can. You can write to them and they will pass it on. But yes, you can write to them. Is that all we're going to take for now? We're going to kind of move on to the
Randy,
next.
there's one other person here who has.
Okay.
Was there litigation on the Kickapoo, and then in that they missed one critical piece that caused a loophole? Can you explain the loophole?
That is the kicker. That's the kicker. Is what I say, and this is another, if someone gets a little sophisticated on it, knows a little bit of their history, they go, Kickapoo's out of the loop. Why did Kickapoo go? They never made the argument. They kind of came up close to the argument, and then they took the wrong fork in the road. And actually the wrong fork in the road that they took and they lost, and if they would have won that fork in the road, they would have lost. They would have won the battle and lost the race. That's really getting into the weeds. But The kicker on the kickapoo is literally, if we're following the law, the way it's written, and the way that history has shown us, the kickapoo never should have been built. Because it should have fallen within this barrier, this one bond issue barrier. But no one made the argument. And similarly, they've done little sticks of the Gilpatrick where they never even went in front of the Supreme Court. They just went in front of council on oversight. No one opposed it. Boom. Just sailed through. This argument's been there the whole time. This statute's been there the whole time. The right argument has never been made. Now, the cool thing is the law says if someone doesn't make an argument in the case, and it should have been made, it's not precedent for a subsequent case. It doesn't keep us from making this argument the next time around. That's law out of the Oklahoma Supreme Court and the United States Supreme Court. It's kind of like party presentation 101. We live in an adversary party presentation system. Judges kind of let themselves off the hook and have decided, probably rightly, that if no party makes a legal argument, it's not their job to go out and find it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But if they don't find it, it's not binding the next time. But yeah, that's a real good question because that's the biggest kicker that everyone thinks when you start talking about it. What about the kickapoo?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's give Robert a hand. Specifically about getting in the fight, staying in the fight. There's a lot of ways you can help get involved. If you like, on your program on the back, there are some QR codes that will tell you about our newsletter, like OTA. There's an opportunity to get merchandise. We do have some stuff out front, and all the proceeds go to help with these lawsuits and help with all the things that we're trying to do to fight the turnpikes. So if you'll check on that, there's a place to donate. I appreciate everybody that's donating. These lawsuits do cost money, and it is important that we stay the course. So if you could get on there and do that, that would be wonderful. Also, too, inside there's a place if you want to submit a question to us. You can use that QR code. You can write the question here and give it to somebody. We will do our best to get the answer. Pike OTA, we're a group of volunteers trying to fight this turnpike. So we'll do our best to find the answers if we can. And we appreciate you guys being involved with the team. And when I was at the transportation building the other day for the meeting, I kind of stuck my head in just the Office of Strategic Communications. It looked to me like, and somebody can tell me for sure, it looked to me like there were 4 or 5 full-time employees that are employed by the Transportation Department in strategic communications, which means they are there putting out information constantly in the media to let people know what their point of view is, and we're just volunteers doing it. So everything you can do to help spread the word is going to help, and I appreciate you guys doing that. Hey, let me introduce our next speaker. Giuffrida is the Executive Director of WildCare Oklahoma. She is passionate about the turnpikes. They come very near their project. But WildCare, for those of you that don't know, is a 501c3. 501c3, so that means any contributions you would make to the organization are tax deductible. That's just a little side plug there for Inger. But what they do is they rehabilitate wildlife. Did I say that correctly? Right on the money. All right, so Inger's going to talk to us about watershed issues and wildlife issues that are concerning the turnpike. So let's give Inger a great big hand. Thanks for your last.
Can y'all hear me? Oh, yes, you can. So I can't believe I'm following Randy and 2 attorneys. But anyway, I'm going to go with it. It's an honor, but it's kind of hard to follow the 3 of them. So because we have such an amazing array of speakers tonight, my time on the agenda is going to be short. But also because I know many of you already know these issues, they're dear to your heart. And so hopefully I'll cover a little bit of new ground, but we're going to keep this part of the agenda kind of short. So as Randy said, I'm the Director of WildCare. We are a nonprofit organization in Cleveland County, but we serve the whole state. We rehabilitate and release wild animals back to the wild, but then also do a lot of conservation education as well as technical assistance when people have believe how many calls that means every day for us. So we are one of the biggest wildlife rehabilitation centers in all of North America. Just like in the last 3 years alone, we've taken in over 22,000 wild animals. Despite that, but despite all of that, this turnpike, as many of you know, is running a quarter to a half mile in front of our operation. And while many of you may assume that the reason WildCare is speaking out on this issue as much as we have been, or the reason that I'm here tonight, is because of that, you're wrong. The things that really concern us, or what we are most concerned about, are the impacts that they're having on you, humans, as well as the wildlife you call neighbors, as well as the natural habitat you moved out to be close to, and of course the watershed that we all so desperately rely on. If push came to shove and we did have to move, we figure it out. It wouldn't be easy, but we'd figure it out. But how do you just relocate 600 families that have called Oklahoma or Cleveland County their homes? Or how do you save thousands of animals, wild animals whose habitats are going to be destroyed, whose nesting sites are going to be destroyed, who are going to lose access to Lake Thunderbird and all the resources it provides? And how do you hope to improve an already impaired lake and a rapidly depleting aquifer that serves hundreds of thousands of people in central Oklahoma when you add more pollutants and an impervious surface to this watershed? These are our concerns, WildCare's concerns, my concerns, and that's why we're involved in this fight, and why we're not going to stop, no matter the obstacles thrown in front of us, not ever. So today, today on our very own Facebook page, I was told to stick to wildlife and not politics based on the information I posted about this event. And as a result of speaking out, some people said they would no longer support us. So it's that whole stay in your lane argument. But if we aren't speaking up for these issues, like who should? When all of this first happened, and before this amazing group, High Top OTA, formed, I reached out to every organization I could think of that was involved in environmental issues in the state, including some of those that have national and international muscle. This issue is either too big or too small, I don't know, but for me, it's very big, it's very personal, it's very relevant, and I feel like it's existential to WildCare, to wildlife, and to all of us sitting in this room. I have to say, I find some incredible situational irony that I'm speaking tonight about environmental impacts of these toll roads in our community at the end of yet another over 100-degree day. And in Oklahoma, in the middle of yet another historic drought. Roads make our environment hotter. That's one of their key environmental impacts. They absorb heat all day long and slowly release it at night, creating a heat island effect. Those studies have been done. That is known and settled science. So that is one of the key environmental impacts these roads are going to have. And then you add on top of that the impervious surface that results when these roads get built, right? And then the inevitability of the gas stations and the businesses and the other development that's going to follow this turnpike, that's going to prevent water recharge into our aquifer, exacerbating drought conditions. It's, as I've said so many times, it's the reason East Norman in particular was zoned A2, to allow for the water to slow down as it approached Lake Thunderbird. And the tragedy of this environmental disaster is that we know better. When the highway system was created, it was an engineering marvel, and there were consequences to neighborhoods, small businesses, and towns. But the focus on connecting communities and creating a way to boost the demand for automobiles and oil and gas kind of masked the negative effects of this construction back then. We are 70 years from that time. 70 years. The fact that the only solution our political and transportation leaders have to address congestion on I-35 is to build more debt-laden, fee-for-use, toxic chemical runoff-producing roads into an already impaired watershed in the middle of a wildlife corridor that will result in the destruction of hundreds of homes and the displacement of thousands is appalling. Many people have asked me about the whole endangered species things. Can't the presence of bald eagles or or Texas horned lizards, which incidentally are not endangered yet, people are trying, or whooping cranes, or even as of yesterday, the newly declared monarch butterflies stop this thing, because we know that they all live everywhere that we're talking about these roads going. The answer is maybe. It's also against the law to harm migratory birds, or even interfere with their nests, or even move an active nest. That's a federal crime to do that. There are active bird nests in Oklahoma all year long. Because as other birds are wrapping it up, at the end of the summer and the beginning of the fall, bald eagles start building their nests and laying their eggs in January. So there are always active nests in Oklahoma. Can you imagine the number of nests that are going to be interfered with by the OTA? But laws require enforcement. And often, we not only lack enforcement muscle when it comes to wildlife law, but also the very agencies that are supposed to be upholding these laws are party to facilitating exceptions to them with administrative tools like incidental take permits. So it can't be stopped through the Endangered Species or Migratory Bird Acts, as many of us believed and still believe, unless we hold the enforcers to account and we pressure them to increase the bar in allowing OTA and other developers from accessing workarounds like incidental take permits. And I'd just like to start with renaming that permit. Like incidental take seems like a euphemism to me. I think it's really we're going to go ahead and let you move forward with this unnecessary construction, threatened and endangered species, migratory birds, habitats, be damned. This sounds like bad news that I'm saying, but I think there's power in clarifying obstacles and understanding where we really need to apply pressure when it comes to these federal laws. Finally, I get asked all the time, what are the chances this turnpike is going to happen? Or the converse, what are the chances you are going to stop them? My response is simple, and it's going to echo the words of everybody else that's spoken tonight. We have a great chance of stopping them if we don't give up, and we stand together and we hold them to account. And holding them... And now I'm just going to talk about some of the amazing people that I've met, not by name, but as a group. Now, holding them to account seems to be the specialty of the Pike Board of Directors. We are so profoundly lucky to have their tremendous leadership in this community. People may be quick to assume that the reason they're involved is because their homes are in the path. While this is true for some of them, it's not for many. And they're in this fight and leading us because they know what is at stake for our community, for the environment, for the wildlife, and for the water we drink and rely on. They're leading the way because they want to do what is right, and they know that doing nothing is immoral. So tonight I am imploring you to stay strong and fight on, keep the faith, and by God, don't lose hope. That's all.
Does anybody have a question for Ingrid at this point? Yes?
My property is actually certified wildlife habitat by the National Wildlife
Federation.
and the state of Oklahoma.
That's fabulous. Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, perfectly wild, so that way we have all kinds of critters there, and if volunteers, deer come downstairs, we have all kinds of, children out there, and so are the rose
Yep.
on our property.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, unfortunately, I don't think that right, at least the way I understand enforcement goes, that doesn't really have any sort of muscle against the OTA. But again, where we have a potential pressure point is to pressure the enforcers. Some of the laws are there, but they're just not being enforced.
Ingrid, thank you. Let's give Ingrid a big hand. What I tell people all the time is we have a lot of arrows in our quiver We just don't know what's going to hit the target, so we need to keep firing every one of them. And exactly what you talked about is a good point. So thank you very much. And also, too, she just touched a little bit on the Rose Rocks, and there is some effort to get the Rose Rocks involved in, what is it, Geoheritage? National Geoheritage that should have, again, I don't know all the details on that, and the people that are out of town that are working on that. So that's another arrow in our quiver that we need to be aware of. All right, I want to introduce our next speaker. Clint Schumacher is a husband, father, and football coach. Clint, sorry, we just hired a football coach here in town last year, so you're out of luck on that if that's your tip. He is an eminent domain attorney from the state of Texas. He has helped his clients obtain over $100 million judgments and settlements over the years. He does a podcast called the Eminent Domain Podcast. It's available on iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. I've never heard of that one. Okay, I learned something new. All right, but here's something that I think he's very, very proud of because he highlighted it on his bio here. He won a belly flop contest. So, ladies and gentlemen, all right. I love that part. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Clint Schumacher.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening. Thanks for having me out. I appreciate that. Let me say, just as a property rights advocate, as somebody that does this all the time, it warms my heart tremendously to see the number of you and the passion that you have for this cause. And I was stunned at how quickly this organization has come together and how well it's formed and how organized it is. I'm honored and humbled to get to follow Mr. Ward and Mr. Norman tonight. You guys are in very capable hands. They're following a great strategy. They're following a strategy that gives you a chance of success. And I am just so pleased at what I'm seeing happen. And then to get to follow Miss Giuffrida, Ingrid, her depth of knowledge was very impressive. I was very, very impressed. I had not got to meet her before tonight. That was wonderful. Franklin D. Roosevelt said this: "The only sure bulwark of continuing liberty is a government strong enough to protect the interests of the people, and a people strong enough and well enough informed to maintain its sovereign control over the government." Let me say the last part of that once more, okay? A people strong enough and well enough informed to maintain its sovereign control over the government. What you are doing, what this group is doing is worthy. It is extraordinarily important. The highest duty of us as citizens is to hold those people responsible for looking after us, our government, accountable, and to make them answer hard questions when things come up that don't seem right. And you are doing that, and the people representing you are doing that, and they're doing that very well. But it can and it will feel frustrating. And it can and it will at times feel hopeless. Since I got into town earlier today, I have heard that already from some of the people in this room. I've been doing this kind of work for 25 years and I hear it often. But you've been encouraged tonight, and rightly so, to keep up the fight. And I think part of my job tonight is to give you just a little bit of hope. We had a chance to work with a group in our part of the world called Texans Against High-Speed Rail. And they were fighting against a proposed high-speed rail project that was going to connect the city of Dallas and the city of Houston. And the project developer, it sounds like very similar to what OTA is doing, their press releases all made it sound like it was going to be a done deal. I think that must be PR strategy. But there was a group of very committed property owners who were in between Dallas and Houston who were going to bear the burden of that project, who got together and formed a group very much like this one. In fact, the leadership of that group spoke to the leader, what is now the leadership of this group, back at the time of the genesis of this group. and they filed the lawsuits they decided they needed to file, and their particular strategy in that case, because it was a different situation than this one, was to challenge high-speed rail's ability to condemn property for that particular project. And they won one of the early skirmishes. But just last month, the Texas Supreme Court actually ruled that the high-speed rail project did have the power of eminent domain. But what happened in the 4 years between when their fight started and just last month is this. TCR, Texas Central Rail, the developer of the project, at one time was well-funded, and at one time had lots and lots of people working for them. They had a board of directors that was responsible for managing the entity. As of last month, when they got the win they've been fighting for in front of our state Supreme Court, the president had already resigned, the board of directors had disbanded, and there was no one left working at the organization. And in fact, when you call the organization today, I saw this on their Facebook page yesterday, when you call the organization today, it gets routed to a consultant at a company called FTI Consulting, which their business is helping bankrupt and insolvent companies. And so that group was having the same discussion you're having. They were having it 4 years ago. And they were facing the same David versus Goliath struggle that you're all facing. But as Mr. Moore rightly said, sometimes David wins. And whether you win this fight, or whether you lose this fight, you will have still fulfilled one of the most important things we can do as citizens, which is to have your voice heard. And so my other task tonight is to tell you just a little bit about the eminent domain process, but I say it with a heavy heart because I hope you never need it. But I also know some of you are already grappling with, well, do I need to start getting prepared? And to some extent, there's prudence in that. It's true. I'll tell you, I don't feel like you need to hire an eminent domain lawyer like me at this point. You're still in the first quarter of a long game. But as you, as a family, are going through those thought processes, I do want you to know this. You have important constitutional and statutory rights. Your framer, your drafter of your Constitution did an excellent job. And in your particular Bill of Rights, Article 2, Section 24, there are very important rights you're given as a property owner. In our federal Constitution, in the Fifth Amendment, you're entitled to just compensation if the government takes your property. In your Oklahoma Constitution, not only do you get compensation for what they take, but you get compensation for any damage that they create to the rest of your property. And one of the things that I love, you've got this in your Constitution, we don't have it in the Texas Constitution. You have the right to have that decision ultimately decided by a jury of your peers if you decide that's what you want to do. And so I say that to say you've got some important rights to protect you if this fight ends up in a way different than what we all hope it's going to end up. But you're still a ways off from having to make those decisions. But I suspect some of you are already grappling with that. Our law firm is Dawson Sod. We have a website, www.dawsonsod.com. And on that, there's a FAQ page that has, among other things, a list of questions to ask anyone you're considering hiring to represent you in the eminent domain part of that. Again, I don't think you need to do that, but as you're grappling with those questions, I just want you to know that resource is there. Randy was nice enough to mention I do have a podcast that I host called the Eminent Domain Podcast. My mom listens to it. I'm very excited about that. But we've got 95 episodes out on a world of things around the world of eminent domain, including an interview with a lawyer that, just like Mr. Norman, represented the Texans against high-speed rail. There's an interview with him on there if you want to listen to some of what they did. Here's what I want to leave you with. I've had the opportunity to visit with a lot of people who are in the situation that you're in. And one of the most important things that I can tell them, because I firmly believe this, that there's nothing our government does to an innocent person that's more intrusive than taking their property. But the other part of that is if ultimately the efforts to stop this project are not successful, and if ultimately they do end up with the right to take property from those of you that are in the route, while they may have the right to take your property, it is wholly up to you about whether they get to take your children. That's something that's wholly within your control. I want to leave you with that truism, and I want to then leave you with this illustration. And this comes from an author named Damon West. He wrote a book with another author named John Gordon. It's called The Coffee Bean. And if you haven't read it, it's an extremely powerful book from an extremely powerful story. And I'll share the summary of his illustration here because I think it's applicable to the season of life that you're walking through. If you take a pot of boiling water and you drop different things into that pot of boiling water, different substances react to that water differently. So for example, if you take a carrot and you drop it into a pot of boiling water, what happens? It becomes soft. If you take an egg and you drop it into a pot of boiling water, it becomes hard on the inside. And as I think about those two, and I want to tell you about a third thing in just a minute, but as I think about those two, I'm not worried about any of the people in this room turning into carrots as you walk through the boiling water, the stress, the anxiety that you're walking through with regard to whether or not this project is going to disrupt your life. You guys are way too strong for that, and I'm far too impressed with you. I do worry about the egg. Because there's a number of people that walk through this, that walk through what feels like the government acting in an unfair way towards me, that hardens your heart and it hardens your spirit, and it turns you into something different than you are. But the third thing in this story, this illustration, is if you take a coffee bean and drop it into a pot of boiling water, what happens? The coffee bean changes the water. It becomes coffee, which you can buy down at Starbucks for $5 But that boiling water releases something that's in that coffee bean that allows the coffee bean to change the entire environment around it. There's a power, there's a fortitude within that coffee bean that spills out to change everything in this world. And I think that describes in so many ways what you're doing, but it also describes what I hope for you as you leave here and march forward in this fight that you have. Because what you have decided to do is, I'm not just going to take this. I, like a coffee bean and a pot of boiling water, am going to take this fight, this stress, this anxiety, this season, very, very difficult season of life that I'm in, and I'm going to do everything within my power to change it. And you have amazing leadership that's helping you do that. And my encouragement to you is to jump in behind them and be supportive of them, like I know so many of you are. I see your Facebook group. I can't believe some of the research that you guys are doing in support of these efforts. So I hope that you'll take that and release the power that's within you as you finish out this fight that you have. So thank you for letting me visit with you tonight.
Does anybody have a question for Clint? Okay, looks like you're off the hook. All right, Clint, thanks. Hey, in Clint's bio, you have run a marathon, is that correct?
One time.
Well, hey, that counts. That counts. And I keep telling everybody that this fight with the OTA is not a sprint, it is a marathon. So we need to keep at it, we need to pace ourselves, and we need to keep moving. I'm going to talk just a little bit, unfortunately you got to listen to me some more. I'm going to talk just a little bit about our legislative process, the progress that we have made this last session. And before I get to that, I want to thank our Norman Area Legislative Caucus for what they did last session to further our fight. Rob Standridge, Mary Bourne, Jacob Rosenkrantz, Danny Sterling, and Marilyn Bell. They're not here tonight, but let's give them a big hand anyway. They were very tremendous. And I got to tell you this, I especially thank Mary Bourne because she taught me how to be a lobbyist. next season, and that's in January, so you guys need to be ready to get after it. Oh, okay. Oh, perfect. Teresa Sterling, candidate for District 45, is here. So give her a big hand. Thank you. All right. Now, speaking of legislature, there's a number of things that happened. I'm sure you all are aware, it was mentioned earlier. The OTA, in our estimation, deliberately announced the access program after the legislative session had already started, when it was too late to file any kind of bill relative to that process. So we think that was kind of sneaky, don't we? So anyway, that's where it stands, and that's part of the process we're going to do with the lawsuits is we're hoping to delay them so that we can come back and talk to the legislature, lobby the legislature to our way of thinking. Now, a number of things happened this last session. House Bill 4088 was authorized by Kevin Wallace. He's the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee and Budget Committee. That's where all the money comes from to build roads and bridges. And surprisingly enough, he is a road contractor and just bought a bridge company or contract with them. That bill did not make it out of the Senate committee, thanks to Ross Standridge and the Transportation Committee. Died in that committee. Senate Bill 1610 was a bill requiring studies of the South Extension specifically before the bonds could even be issued. It was an effort by Ross Standridge to slow down the process and again buy us time to get into the 2023 session. That bill went back and forth to the House and the Senate, and there was just some conflict. It just did not work. It didn't get passed. But it righted the ship in our direction. In fact, when I was up at the legislature, I don't know how many times I went to a representative or a senator's office, and either they or their legislative assistant, they're the ones who really did a lot of that work done. They told me numerous times that the OTA had never been over to the legislature to try to talk to them until we started getting involved in the process. They know we're making a difference, and we are, so we need to keep that up. Ultimately, the bill failed because of some amendments and some other things, but again, we made progress. So that's something we can be very, very proud of. And you know, I want to talk about progress too, because we made a lot of progress just the other day at the Oklahoma Transportation Commission meeting. I don't know how aware you all are of that, but our own Amy Serrato, 6-page letter to the Transportation Committee with 80 some odd pages of supporting data. The Transportation Commission talked about that, and even James Grimsley on the commission voted no. So that, again, that's got the ship moving in our direction just a little bit. It is heading in our direction. So we need to keep up the fight. House 1021. House, what do we call that? Anyway, 1021, Representative Sterling asked for it's a concurrent resolution. Thank you. I'm sorry, my words left me there. Calling for an audit of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. We lobbied very, very hard, and so did the OTA for that matter. They lobbied very, very hard. Why do they not want to show their books? Why the lack of transparency? Unfortunately, at the last minute, the resolution failed. It passed out of the House by unanimous consent. That means nobody voted against it. It went to the Senate, the second to the last day of the session. It was passed by the House. So it needed to get on the Senate agenda that day so it could be heard the next day, which was the last day of the session. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Senator Maryborn took great political risk in asking for the rules to be suspended in the Senate so that resolution could be heard. That unfortunately needs a supermajority. We came up 8 votes short. We had a majority of the votes, but we needed 8 more to have a supermajority. So that was great news again. We righted the ship. We sent it in our direction, but it's going to take a lot more effort. The lawsuits are going to delay. We hope they delay them long enough that we can have an influence. So we need you all to be contacting your legislators. campaign for the people that are against the Turnpike. We know we know who they are, and we will certainly be glad to share that information with you. But it's going to take a massive effort to get the legislature to create legislation, pass legislation that will stop these turnpikes. But I think we can do it. I know we can do it, and we need to keep after it. Does anybody have any questions about legislation specifically that I might be able to answer, or somebody else that probably knows a lot more about it than I do?
When does the next session start?
I believe the next session starts in January. Am I correct on that? First, the bills have to be filed by when? December. The bills have to be filed by December. The session starts in January, and it is over the last Friday in May. Is that correct? Okay, good. Hey, I remember this. I got some of this down. Okay, so that's when the session will start and end. So, but we need to get influence moving long before that. Okay. Does anybody else have any other legislative questions? How about any questions in general that we might be able to answer? Anybody else have any other questions?
I do.
Yes.
I was just wondering, I mean, this is my first meeting. I've heard so many different things about, say they do take a person's land.
Say they do take a person's land.
I mean, do they give you fair market? I've heard so many different things.
As I understand it, and Clint might be able to help me with this, they are required to give you fair market value. That, to me, that's not replacement cost. So that's a different thing.
Is that just for the land?
No, it's for the whole property. The whole value of the whole property, whatever they're going to take, I believe, about that.
So that includes the well,
Yes. Everything that's included on the property. But again, I think the impetus lies on us to make sure, again, the eminent domain process, you have the right to, in Oklahoma, I believe this, you have the right to decline their first offer and their second offer. And then that's when it goes to eminent, that's when they commence with the eminent domain process. Am I okay? I'm saying that correctly. And at that point, in Oklahoma, it goes to a trial. There are what they call 3 commissioners that will come out and I believe do an appraisal. They have no clue what the Turnpike Authority would have offered you at that time. They go out and do an appraisal. And if that appraisal comes in 10% or more higher than whoever the condemning party is, if it comes in 10% higher than that, then indeed they are also required to pay all of your legal fees. So, okay, make sure I'm speaking correctly.
I have heard that if they offer you a price and you turn it down, that they can take it and you don't receive anything. That's not.
No, I don't. I can't imagine that if you turn down an offer that you would receive nothing. That is absolutely not legal in any way, shape, or form. So no. Now you could in the court process, if those commissioners decide that you get less money, then you're stuck with it, and then you are on the hook for the attorney's fees as well too. So I mean, it's a two-edged sword. I mean, if I get to that point with my property, what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare, and Mike Leary, who is active with the No Turnpikes group and ICOP OTA, he has suggested that we do what's called a takeoff, put together a complete notebook full of what it would cost to replace the house, the well, the driveway, every kind of improvement you've made, to present that to them if it does get to that point. But folks, we're going to do our darndest to not let it ever get to that point. So, I mean, I want to know this stuff too, but yes, that's we're going to do it. I myself am willing to do everything that's legal, moral, and ethical to stop this turnpike, and I hope that the rest of you all feel that way as well, because that's why we're here. So, did I?
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
That's not quite right.
It's not quite what I understand? Okay.
here's what the process is. The 3 commissioners that get appointed, if you cannot negotiate a resolution, are appointed by the board. These 3 commissioners then prepare a report of the commissioners. And the report of the commissioners, if you like it, that's at the end of it. If you don't like it, they can go ahead and deposit the money with the court clerk and immediately take possession of your property. But they do have to pay you just compensation. That's what the Constitution statute says, which is the value of the property taken and the injury to any remaining property. Now, there are more dimensions to that, but that's an easy rule of thumb.
Microphone's not on.
I guess I'm not projecting.
See if I said, if I can repeat what he said correctly. He said that if, okay, the 3 commissioners, you can decline that offer that the 3 commissioners present. Is that correct? Okay, and if you do decline that, they can still take your property and put the money in your account.
They deposit with the court clerk. You have the right to take the money when they deposit, and they have the right to possession. Now, if you make a demand for jury trial, of course, no one knows on the jury, allegedly, what the report of the commissioner's valuation is. That's not allowed in evidence. So you have to get your own appraisers, and you have to present that evidence before the court and the jury, and they make a decision as to what the value of the property taken is worth, plus any injuries remaining. That's a quickie, right, Rick?
I flunked eminent domain in law school that I didn't go to. All right. Any other questions that we can answer about anything that we've talked about tonight? Yes.
I have a property, it's a second property on Indian Hills Road, and my 2 neighbors to the north of me, which are directly on Indian Hills Road, are already in negotiations with the MTA to sell their properties and are doing so voluntarily.
Yes.
And they, right now.
I don't specifically know the answer to that. I believe that they can negotiate with anybody specifically that wants to present that to them.
Because these 2 homeowners, they're doing it voluntarily.
Yes, yes.
One of them thinks they have to. I said, no, you don't have to.
No, they don't have to. They do not have to. If they can do it voluntarily if they want to negotiate with them. That is certainly an option that the property owner can take, as I understand it.
What happens to those properties? Do they remain unattended?
No. Here's what I have been told by a couple of people, that one lawyer and another, anyway. If they come in and take your property, they will pay you that money. The money goes into your account. It's your money. And then you can live in the property until they actually come and decide to take it over. And that could be 2, 3, 4 years if that is the case, as I understand it. Is that?
Do you live in your property rent? Do they live in their property rent free?
I believe that you, again, I think I heard you pay $1 a year. Now, we need to do more research on that. That's just what I have been told. One was a lawyer, one was not. But that's the best answer I can
They
give.
currently do 1-year lease agreements.
1-year lease agreements? Okay. There's the answer. And they told me it was $1 a year, so that's all I know. Okay. I do want to say something too. There's been a little controversy in our group about our former mayor, Larry Heikkila. I have been in contact with him. I've had 3 or 4 meetings with him and planning to have another one. Larry is very muchly opposed to these turnpikes and is doing everything that he can to fight them. And with our help, he's learning more and more about it. In fact, I spoke with him on the phone today. He is very muchly in support of our No Turnpikes cause. I just wanted to mention that because I know there's been some talk about that. So anyway, anybody else have any other questions?
I did.
There are 3 interim studies that have been approved, 2 in the Senate and 1 in the House. I believe one of them is beginning in September. Okay, I believe that's the House, is beginning in September. And I have heard again, I've heard through the grapevine that our group has been asked to provide testimony to that. So that's yes, that is wonderful. So, does that answer your question?
Will that information on the day and the time you put out there?
Oh, absolutely, we will, and I understand that it is a public meeting. Generally, they hold those meetings in pretty small rooms, so there's not a lot of room for people to attend, but they are most of those rooms have big glass windows there, so you can kind of spy on what's going on. So, but those are going on, and I don't know. You can find the specific language of what those studies are specifically going to study. And also, when we find out the legislators that are in those committees, it would be a great idea for our group to start talking to them and telling them our point of view and letting them know what we think about it. So, Tanner, do you want to just real quick come on up? Tanner is the guy that is shooting videos of people whose homes are affected and wants to say a quick word.
I don't know how many of y'all seen StopTollOK.com, but I'm the one who put that together, and Jesse has been helping me to tell people stories and take photographs of them, and I've been doing some video work. If you would like to tell your story, it doesn't have to be tonight. It can be another time you come out to your property and shoot photos or shoot video and tell your story. If you want to remain anonymous and you want to type up your story, you can also send that to me at stoptollok@gmail.com. And I'll get those stories posted as well with no photographs of your family and no mention of your name or anything like that. So people who value their privacy, that's a way to still tell your story and not give away who you are, I guess. So, thank you.
All right, Tanner, thanks. I suppose, Tanner, could you put one of those little black strips across their eyes?
Maybe able to fade them out.
Okay. Shadow your face. Okay, that'll work. Okay, any other questions? Anything else we need to talk about? Kelly, is there anything I forgot that we need to cover? Anybody else in our group that? Yes. Okay.
I heard rumors today that ODOT and OTA have merged. Is that true?
She said we've heard that ODOT and OTA have merged. I have not heard that. They are under Tim Gatz is the director of the Secretary of Transportation on the governor's cabinet. He is the director of OTA and the director of ODOT, the Department of Transportation. They do co-mingle some employees. I have not specific there. Has anybody heard anything about that?
I have. They have not merged.
Okay, they have not merged, so that's just a vicious rumor. And I want to mention that too, because one of the things, I've been involved in a number of political campaigns over the years, and the opposition always tries to throw stuff out there to get you upset, to get you off course, to take you off the direction that you're going. So don't listen to all this crap. Don't pay attention to it. We didn't know what's going on, but don't get riled up about it. They're just trying to get under our skin. Sometimes they do. And for me, it just motivates me to get stronger and fight back. So don't let them get to you. It's just typical. It's just typical what happens in a campaign. Campaigns can get ugly, and I hate that. And I'm not going to go there personally, but be prepared that the opposition might. I've seen it happen many, many times. Okay. Any other questions? Any other comments?
I've heard it's a dead deal.
I've heard it's a dead deal. I like that. Thanks, Jan. All right, I appreciate it. Okay, well, I guess that's going to wrap it up. I just want to say one thing before we close. Of all the meetings I've ever been to, of all the events I've ever attended, I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, tonight, this is absolutely the most recent. Hey, thank you all for being here. Let's keep up the fight. It is a dead deal. Oh, wait. I forgot something. Okay. Okay, we got some door prizes. Did anybody bring a door? Okay, what we got to win? Oh. Oh, we're gonna draw names. Is that what we got? They put it. Oh, you got a badge? All right, first, what are they winning, Kelly? What are they going to win? Well, you got prizes. You just brought prizes up there. I drew a number. I've got a number. No, tell me what we're going to win. Don't we get to do what we got? Swag. Okay, we're winning swag. Number 33. If you have number 33 on your badge, you are a winner. And if it's you, I want you to stand up and holler, it's me, it's me, it's me, and run up here. Okay, let's draw another number. 33 has departed. Okay, we got 15. Your chances are pretty good now that we've thinned the crowd a little bit. Okay, we didn't have that. All right, here's our next check your badge number. Number 60. 60. Do we have 60 in the room? No, not 60. Okay, check your badge number. Check your badge number. Here comes our next prize winner. Number 80. 80. We have an 80. There's an 80. Come on up. Here, we'll pass it back. All right. Me and Ben. Okay. Here we go. Clint's got it right here. He's gonna. All right, here we go. Our next prize winner, number 46. Who is number 46? Do we have a number 46 in the room? No 46 is wrong. Oh, do we have a 46? Okay. You gotta stay away. All right. Congratulations. All right, it's a brown envelope. It's a plain brown envelope. All right, number 5. If you were number 5 in tonight's order, number 5, we have number 5. Cinco. All right, here we go. Here's another one. Another door prize. Number 3. Number 3. Number 3. Okay, you guys. Nothing 1 through 5. All right, how about 9? 9. Number 9. Oh, wait a minute. Is it 6? No, it's 9. It's 9. Number 9. Come on up. Come on up. Number 9. Get a prize. Oh, you're number 9? Oh, I got number 9 right here.
That's number 3.
Okay, we got 2 9s. All right, hey, we got it. Congratulations. I don't know what it is, but congratulations. All right, I need another number. All right, here we go. Here we have a book number. That's number 9 as well.
I won again, all right.
Number 7. Number 7. We have number 7 in the room. All right. Congratulations, lucky number 7. This is a book. Oh, this is Clint Schumacher's book. Clint, all right. 2nd win. Congratulations. I've been accused of being windy. All right. Here we go. 61. Number 61. Are you in the room? Number 61. Number 61. Here's number 61. Here comes another prize. Number 51. 51. Anybody number 51 in the room? No, 51. All right. Here. Number 20. Do we have a number 20 set up? Yay! All right. There you go. Congratulations. Just open it. Let me know what it is. I'm curious. All right. 41. Number 41. Is number 41 in the room still? All right, number 41. 84, number 84, are you here? 84? 84? No, number 84. Okay. 38, number 38. 54, number 54. 54, are you here? You gotta be